Some people feel lonely their entire lives, even surrounded by others. Others feel a quiet devastation when, even inside intimate relationships, they feel profoundly alone, unseen, and unheard. Most people are not lonely because they are alone. They are lonely because they were never met. Loneliness is often early, relational, developmental, and deeply embodied, which is why success doesn't cure it, visibility doesn't cure it, being surrounded by people doesn't cure it. Sometimes it intensifies it. Loneliness isn't another emotional state you must conquer in order to become whole. It isn't a personal flaw you secretly berate yourself for, believing you are too needy, too sensitive, or asking for too much. And it isn't a passing phase you can snap out of because someone insists that nothing is missing. Loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of emotional resonance. Loneliness doesn't always look like someone sitting alone in a silent room. It can look like an emotionally unavailable partner you no longer dare express your truth to, family or friends who cannot meet the depth of your growth, being valued for what you do but not who you are, staying quiet to preserve connection while feeling invisible inside it. I have sat for many hours with tender, aching hearts, people finally naming the deep shame they carry around the loneliness they live with. They range from their early 20s to their late 60s. They are married, single, divorced, partnered, long-term alone, or desperately hoping that this time love will finally relieve the ache. And this is important. Loneliness does not discriminate by relationship status. In my work, these questions surface again and again. So if they're running through your mind, please know you are not alone. Yes, the irony is real. Will anyone ever really see me? If I show my real needs, will they leave? Is there something about me that's unreachable? Why do I feel alone even when someone is right next to me? Why does connection feel exhausting instead of nourishing? Is anyone actually safe to trust? If I leave this dysfunctional relationship, will I lose everything I've built? Loneliness is often a core wound, which means the present moment isn't the origin of the pain. It's the inner child sending messages from the past straight to the nervous system. Loneliness often forms when emotional needs were minimized, dismissed, or treated as burdensome. Expression didn't lead to attunement. The child learned, I'm too much, or I must manage alone. Connection came with a cost: rejection, withdrawal, shaming, or emotional volatility. The nervous system learned something devastatingly logical. Closeness isn't safe, but distance hurts. That double bind creates loneliness inside relationships, hyper-independence, longing paired with withdrawal, being successful yet unseen, a deep, nameless grief people struggle to articulate. Loneliness, then, is not the absence of love, it is the memory of reaching and not being met. Loneliness is not just something that happens to people. For many, it is something the nervous system learned when early connection was inconsistent, unsafe, or conditional, or emotionally unavailable. The body adapted, not by longing less, but by expecting less. The child didn't stop needing connection, they stopped trusting that it would arrive. So loneliness became a strategy, a way of staying emotionally self-contained, a way of not reaching too far, wanting too much, or risking the ache of unmet need again. Over time, the nervous system learned it's safer to be alone than disappointed. It's safer to self-regulate than co-regulate. It's safer to be competent than vulnerable. It's safer to be needed than needing. This is how loneliness becomes chronic, not because connection never appears, but because the body doesn't know how to receive it without bracing. So, even when love, intimacy, friendship, or attention is present, the system stays guarded, listening for rupture, scanning for withdrawal, holding back parts of the self just in case. This is why people can feel lonely in long-term relationships, in families, in friendships, in rooms full of people at the height of success or visibility, because chronic loneliness isn't the absence of others, it's the absence of felt safety in connection. And until the nervous system learns that closeness no longer comes with cost, loneliness will persist, not as a feeling, but as a state. Not everyone responds to loneliness by reaching. For many, especially those who learned early that connection was unpredictable or costly, the nervous system eventually chooses a different strategy. It goes still. This is functional freeze, a state where life continues on the outside, but something inside has gone dim. You may still work, socialise, achieve, care for others, but emotionally there is a sense of suspension. Longing doesn't disappear, it goes underground. In functional freeze, the nervous system decides reaching hurts too much, hoping takes too much energy, wanting exposes me to disappointment. So instead of seeking connection, the body conserves. Loneliness becomes quieter, flatter, harder, but no less present. Some people don't describe loneliness as sadness. They describe it as numbness, apathy, disinterest, low motivation, emotional fatigue, a sense of watching life rather than participating. Connection isn't actively avoided, it just doesn't feel available enough to move forward. Because functional freeze often looks like competence or independence, it's rarely recognised for what it is, a protective response to repeated unmet connection. In this state, even opportunities for intimacy can feel overwhelming. Messages go unanswered, invitations feel heavy. The effort of being known feels disproportionate to the reward, not because the desire isn't there, but because the nervous system is tired of reaching into an empty space. Functional freeze is not giving up. It is a body resting from hope. And unless this state is recognised with compassion, people often blame themselves. Why don't I want connection? Why can't I try harder? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong. This is what happens when loneliness has been carried for too long without relief. Big cities promise connection, opportunity, culture, movement, belonging, and yet for so many they deepen loneliness. This is the city paradox. You are surrounded by people and still profoundly alone. In cities like London, loneliness doesn't come from isolation. It comes from anonymity. You can move through crowds all day without being seen, share trains, streets, cafes, offices without being met. There is constant stimulation but very little intimacy, constant movement but nowhere to rest. The nervous system is bombarded. Noise, speed, choice, comparison, urgency, and yet it is emotionally undermet. Connection becomes efficient, transactional, surface level. People are surviving their own lives, guarding their own time, managing their own overload. So conversations stay polite, light, contained. Depth feels intrusive. Slowness feels inconvenient. Vulnerability feels risky. For someone whose nervous system already learned that closeness comes with cost, this environment quietly reinforces the belief: don't ask too much, don't take up space, don't slow anyone down. So loneliness becomes normalised, not dramatic, not obvious, just constant. And because cities reward independence, productivity and self-sufficiency, many people don't realise they're lonely. They just feel tired, restless, unseen or strangely hollow. Which is why loneliness in big cities can feel so confusing. You're not alone, but you are unsupported, connected but not held, visible but not known. And for an inner child who once learned that connection was unreliable, the city can feel familiar in all the wrong ways. When loneliness feels unbearable, the nervous system doesn't sit still and reflect. It adapts. Most people ignore loneliness. They work around it. They find ways to dull it, manage it, or momentarily escape it. Not because they're dishonest, but because the ache feels too threatening to face directly. One of the most common ways loneliness is managed is through proximity without intimacy. Hookups, situationships, brief encounters that offer touch, attention, desire without the risk of being fully known. For a moment, the body feels less alone, but the nervous system never truly settles because what it's seeking isn't sex or chemistry, it's safety, attunement, and emotional presence. So the loneliness returns, often sharper than before. Another common pattern is the loneliness of fantasy, staying emotionally attached to someone unavailable, imagining a future that never quite arrives, clinging to potential crumbs or rare moments of connection and calling them intimacy. This kind of loneliness is particularly painful because it looks like hope. The nervous system stays engaged, waiting, scanning, investing, while reality quietly fails to meet it. And letting go doesn't just mean losing the person, it means grieving the relationship that never truly existed. There is also the deep vulnerability of being drawn toward love bombers, spiritual gaslighters, or narcissistic partners. For someone whose inner child learned that love is unpredictable or conditional, intensity can feel like connection. Attention can feel like safety. Mirroring can feel like being seen until it isn't. And when the emotional withdrawal comes, the loneliness doesn't just return, it confirms the old wound. I was foolish to need. Perhaps the most invisible strategy of all is toxic empathy. This is where loneliness is managed by minimizing your own needs to avoid abandonment. You listen more than you speak. You accommodate more than you ask. You carry emotional weight that isn't yours. Connection is preserved, but at the cost of your own aliveness. And over time, something devastating happens. You are surrounded by people and profoundly alone inside yourself. These strategies are not failures. They are intelligent adaptations formed in response to early relational uncertainty, but they come at a cost. They keep loneliness busy, not healed. Because loneliness doesn't dissolve when we avoid needing. It dissolves when it becomes safe for our needs to be met. Some of the deepest loneliness exists inside long-term relationships. This is the loneliness that rarely gets spoken aloud, because from the outside, life looks settled. There is commitment, history, shared logistics, sometimes children, sometimes security, status, or stability, and yet internally there is a quiet despair, not explosive unhappiness, but a slow, aching sense of being emotionally stranded. This kind of loneliness forms when your inner world is no longer invited. Conversations never reach depth. Bids for connection go unanswered or minimized. Your growth creates distance instead of intimacy. Repair doesn't happen even when rupture is named. Over time, hope begins to drain. For many, the nervous system doesn't move toward leaving, it moves towards endurance, especially if early life taught you that needs cause withdrawal, asking leads to disappointment, stability matters more than aliveness, being alone feels more frightening than being unseen, so you stay. Not because you don't know something is missing, but because leaving feels too destabilizing. The loneliness here isn't just relational, it's existential. Questions begin to circle quietly. Is this my life now? Will it ever change? Am I asking too much? Is this the best it gets? And because this loneliness doesn't fit in the cultural narrative, you should be grateful. Relationships take work. Nobody is fulfilled all the time. People turn the pain inward. They shrink their needs. They stop reaching. They tell themselves, it's fine. This is where hopelessness can quietly take root. Not dramatic hopelessness, but the kind that slowly dulls desire, curiosity, and joy. This is not failure. It is what happens when a nervous system learns that movement risks loss and stillness feels safer even when it hurts. And for those who have lived through emotional neglect or abandonment, the cost of leaving can feel far greater than the cost of staying. So loneliness becomes a companion, one that's familiar, predictable, and devastatingly quiet. Some loneliness arrives not because something was missing, but because something meaningful ended. Bereavement brings a particular kind of loneliness that no amount of social connection can touch. It is not simply missing someone, it is living in a world that no longer mirrors the one you knew. A shared language disappears. A witness to your life is gone. The future you unconsciously expected collapses. And the nervous system is left trying to orient itself in unfamiliar terrain. This kind of loneliness is not about being unseen, it is about being unaccompanied in meaning. Transitions, like the empty nest, can open a deep, unexpected void. When children leave, a role that once organised time, identity and purpose quickly dissolves. The house may be calmer, quieter and profoundly hollow. People often minimise this. You should enjoy the freedom. You've done your job. But the nervous system doesn't work in slogans. What's lost is not just daily activity, it's the rhythm of connection, the sense of being needed, the shared emotional field that once filled the space. And when these personal losses occur alongside wider uncertainty, a world in chaos, political instability, economic fear, environmental threat, collective grief, loneliness can deepen into something existential. It's not just who is here for me, it becomes what am I standing on now? What still holds? Is there a place for me in this world as it is? This form of loneliness is often quiet, heavy, and disorienting. It doesn't demand attention, it just drains vitality. And because it isn't caused by relational dysfunction, people often feel confused by it. They may have friends, family, support, and still feel profoundly alone. This is not pathology. It is the nervous system grieving the loss of coherence. A life chapter has ended. The map has changed, and the body hasn't yet found new ground. In these moments, loneliness is not asking to be fixed. It's asking to be witnessed, to be held with honesty, to be allowed its full weight, to be met without being rushed toward moving on, because some loneliness is not a problem to solve. It is a passage to walk through, and it deserves tenderness. For many people, loneliness doesn't ease with personal growth. It intensifies, and this is deeply confusing, often frightening. After therapy, healing work, spiritual awakening, or a period of profound self-awareness, people expect to feel more connected. Instead, they often feel more alone than ever. This doesn't mean growth was a mistake. It means something important is happening. Personal growth changes how you relate, not just how you feel. As awareness deepens, you may notice dynamics you once tolerated, feel less able to perform, placate, or self-abandon, outgrow conversations that stay surface level, feel the cost of being unseen more acutely, lose the ability to unknow what your body now recognizes as misattunement. What once felt manageable now feels painful, not because it got worse, but because you stopped numbing to it. Growth often dismantles the strategies that once protected you, the humour that kept things light, the competence that made you useful, the silence that preserved connection, the emotional labour that kept relationships intact. And when those strategies fall away, a gap appears. You are no longer willing to disappear, but you may not yet be surrounded by people who can truly meet you. This creates a particular type of loneliness, not the loneliness of being unseen, but the loneliness of seeing clearly. You may find that old relationships feel strangely hollow. Familiar spaces no longer feel safe or nourishing. Success brings visibility without intimacy. Connection feels possible but not available. This is not regression, it's transition. Growth often moves faster than our relational world can keep up with. And until your environment catches up or changes, loneliness can deepen. Especially for those who grew up managing others' emotions, growth can feel like stepping out of a crowded room into quiet truth. The noise is gone, the company is gone, and for a while it's just you. That space can feel terrifying, but it is also somewhere where something new becomes possible. But it is also where something new becomes possible, because loneliness after growth is not asking you to go back. It's asking you to build relationships that no longer require self-erasure, and that takes time. Loneliness, abandonment, and emotional neglect are often spoken about as if they are the same thing. They're not. They are distinct relational wounds, but they frequently overlap, layer, and reinforce one another. This is why the pain can feel confusing, hard to name, and difficult to resolve. Understanding the difference matters, not to categorize yourself, but to understand what your nervous system is responding to. My needs didn't matter. Emotional neglect forms when a child's feelings, needs, or inner world were constantly unseen, minimized, or unsupported, even if caregivers were physically present or well-intentioned. What's missing isn't love in theory, but attunement in practice. The child learns, don't expect emotional response, don't express too much, don't need loudly. The nervous system imprints, my inner world is alone, The adult echoes are difficulty identifying needs, discomfort receiving care, chronic self-reliance, a sense of emptiness that's hard to explain. Emotional neglect often becomes the soil from which loneliness grows. If I need, I might lose you. Abandonment is not just physical leaving, it includes emotional withdrawal, unpredictability, disappearance, or the repeated threat of disconnection. The nervous system learns closeness is unstable, love can vanish, attachment requires vigilance. The nervous system imprints, I must stay alert to avoid being left. The adult echoes are fear of expressing needs, clinging or pushing away, hypervigilance in relationships, staying in unhealthy dynamics to avoid loss. Abandonment wounds often create anxiety around connection, even when it's present. I am not met. Loneliness is the felt experience that arises when emotional neglect and/or abandonment have shaped the nervous system. It's not a lack of people, it's a lack of felt resonance. The nervous system imprints, I am unseen even when I'm with others. The adult echoes are loneliness inside relationships, feeling unknown or unreachable, exhaustion from performing connection, longing paired with withdrawal. Loneliness is often the signal, not the origin. Many people carry all three layered, not separate. For example, emotional neglect teaches you not to need. Abandonment teaches you to fear loss. Loneliness becomes the quiet, consistent ache beneath both. So you may crave connection deeply, struggle to receive it, feel alone even when loved, doubt whether anyone can truly meet you. Not because you're difficult, but because your nervous system learned that connection was inconsistent, conditional, or costly. If loneliness is treated as a social problem, it won't resolve. If abandonment is treated as a confidence issue, it won't soften. If emotional neglect is minimized because nothing bad happened, the wound remains unseen. Healing begins when we understand what was missing, what was frightening, what the body adapted to survive. Loneliness eases not when you try harder to connect, but when the nervous system learns that being met is possible, safe, and sustainable. Safe connection is not something you decide to do. It's something the nervous system has to experience. For those shaped by emotional neglect, abandonment, or chronic loneliness, connection was never neutral. It came with cost, vigilance, adaptation, disappearance, or emotional labour. So healing doesn't happen by opening up more or trying harder. It happens by unlearning the need to abandon yourself in order to belong. Safe connection is relearned slowly, not through grand declarations of vulnerability, but through small, consistent moments where expression does not lead to rupture, where needs are met with curiosity rather than withdrawal, where honesty does not result in punishment. The nervous system learns in increments, one boundary held without loss, one truth spoken and received, one need expressed without shame, one moment of being seen and not left. This is how safety is encoded, not intellectually, but somatically. Safe connection is relearned relationally. Healing loneliness does not happen in isolation. It happens in relationship with therapists, friends, partners, communities, where co-regulation replaces self-containment. And for many, this is the hardest part. If you learned early that connection was unreliable, your system may equate closeness with danger. So receiving care can feel uncomfortable, suspicious, or overwhelming, even when it's wanted. This is normal. The work is not to force trust, but to allow it to build through repetition, repair, and mutual presence, and crucially, Safe connection is relearned without self-erasure. This is where healing diverges from old patterns. Connection no longer requires minimizing your needs, staying quiet to preserve closeness, being easy to keep the peace, carrying more than your share. Instead, safety is measured by something new. Can I remain myself here? Can I feel disappointment without disappearing? Can I express truth without bracing for loss? Can I be met without performing? When the answer slowly becomes yes, loneliness begins to soften. Not because more people arrive, but because the nervous system no longer believes it must face the world alone. This is not fast work. It is not linear, and it does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to gently return to yourself and to discover that connection can exist alongside your truth, not at its expense. Loneliness isn't about proximity, it's about felt emotional resonance. Many people learned early to connect without being truly met. When connection required self-erasure, vigilance, or emotional labour, the nervous system adapted by staying guarded, even in the presence of others. So you may have relationships, conversations, even intimacy, and still feel alone inside them. This isn't a failure of effort or gratitude. It's a nervous system that hasn't yet learned that connection can be safe and mutual. Chronic loneliness is not a personality flaw. It's often the after effect of emotional neglect, abandonment, or inconsistent attunement. When connection was unreliable or costly, the body learned to self-contain. Over time, loneliness became a state rather than a feeling, familiar, predictable, and quietly enduring. What feels like something wrong is often something that once worked to keep you safe. Growth removes numbing. As awareness deepens, you stop disappearing, performing, or tolerating misattunement. What you once endured unconsciously, you now feel consciously. This can create a painful gap. You are no longer willing to abandon yourself, but you may not yet be surrounded by people who can truly meet you. This phase is not regression, it's transition. Loneliness after growth is often an invitation to build connection that no longer requires self-erasure, and that takes time. Loneliness can soften, not by forcing connection, but by relearning safety in relationship. Healing doesn't happen through trying harder to belong. It happens when the nervous system experiences slowly and repeatedly that needs can be expressed without punishment. Boundaries don't lead to abandonment. Presence doesn't require performance. This is relational work. It unfolds gradually, and it does not ask you to become someone else. Loneliness eases when the body learns it no longer has to face the world alone. If watching this video has resonated with you, my trauma-informed 6-week immersion combines hypnotherapy, somatic practice, and deep inner child work to restore regulation and rebuild self-trust. It teaches your body that safety no longer depends on control, that love and calm can coexist. Please feel welcome to book a discovery call. I work both in person and online. You don't have to carry this alone. You're not too much. You're not broken. You're becoming. Thanks for watching.